How are you doing today? I hope you're feeling pretty proud. You should feel pretty good about where you are right now. We're not done. We're getting closer. But man, look what you've accomplished. Your profile's looking good. You know your unique selling proposition. You've identified your ideal client. So today we're going to look closer at the journey that your ideal client takes, especially when they go on the web, to get their questions answered, because that's going to give you all the information and the fuel, everything you need to be able to create powerful content that is going to, like a magnet, it's going to attract them. It's going to bring them in. That's what we're doing today. Buckle up. It's going to be a good one. Let's go. Today we got to get a little bit more nitty gritty. At the end of the week, our ultimate goal is to be able to create some content that when they run across it on the web, it's going to resonate with them. It's going to build trust with them so they recognize who you are, and then it's going to lead them to you. But to do that, we need to understand what it is that they're going to the web to understand. And so it reminds me a little bit of what we talked about the other day. If you look right here, the modern buyer's journey. So here they are, they're sitting at their computer or on their phone, they're trying to figure something out. They recognize they have a problem, but what do they do next? And so they have some questions, and they're going to Google those questions, or they're going to look at content online. And then if you've done your job right, that's what these little ghosts are here, right? You've created content that makes an appearance, right? We call it the absent presence. So you have this absent presence in their life that allows them to start getting to feel like they know you, even though you haven't sat down at the very first meeting yet in real life, where you're really gonna, make quick work of answering their questions and leading them down the right path. So this is experience. They're online. They're trying to get their questions answered. Whoever's content they see is going to help answer those questions and draw them in further down their buyer's journey. So what does that buyer's journey look like? Well, what we really need to focus on is the fact that you can't have one piece of content that solves everything for people. The truth is we are in different steps of the buyer's journey. So for example, you see right here the different phases. So we have the awareness phase. I think I may have a problem. Consideration. I know I have a problem and I need to figure out how to solve my existing problem. So how do I solve it? Decision. Okay, now that I've seen some solutions, I need to decide which one is the one that I'm going to go with. And then there's a step that I'm not really showing here between the decision and retention, which is really the process by which you become, they become a client. So the writing out the policy and getting all that stuff squared away. But like I say, you won't really use social media for that for very much. And then finally, once they are a client, then we've got retention. So they're going to have different questions. So what's important to know is that every single phase of the buyer's journey, they have a different set of questions. And so the questions they're asking here are not the same question they'd ask here or here. And what we want to do is we want to map this out. We want to make sure we understand what those questions are, so that way we can create content that meets them where they are. I talked about this on I think it was the first day when my wife had gone for the drive in her brother-in-law's truck, and she was so excited she wanted to buy it. For me, she explained to me and she was like, okay, Brett, we really need a new truck. Well, I was not as sold as she was, right? She was right here. She's like, I've seen the truck, I want it, let's get it. For me, I'm still back here trying to decide, do I really need a new truck? I'm not really sure if I do or not. And so if you, as a salesperson, are creating content that really fits the needs of the buyer at this stage online, and they're only back here, there's going to be a misconnect or a disconnect. And so what we want to do is we want to understand what are the questions they're asking here, 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 here. Make sure that we're meeting them, creating videos, content, whatever we share, case studies, things like that. Maybe it's other material that's already published that aligns to help them move down this process. So when we think about this, there's going to be kind of a cycle that happens for the consumer, right? They're saying, oh, I'm at this phase and I have some questions. Maybe I'm starting an online business and I'm like, do I need insurance for this? I don't really know. I'm a W-2 employee and I started this online business. I got this Etsy store. And so my question is, do I need insurance? Or maybe they're an existing client, right? I have a restaurant and because of COVID now receipts are down, and do I, endorse down my my policy, or do I wait for the next audit? Like, what am I going to do here? We're going to ask some questions. And so when we do that, first step, ask the questions. Maybe it's I'm just buying a car. Maybe it's I'm getting an umbrella policy. Like whatever these things are, I think one example could be, I've started buying investment properties, right? It's been a really good market, bought a couple of investment properties. My buddy says you need an umbrella policy. I don't really know what that is. So either way, I've got some questions, right? If I'm in the awareness phase, I'm just trying to understand what exactly are these things, right? Maybe I need cyber liability. Like whatever these things are, we want to understand what are they, because we don't want to go talk to someone before we know. So you're going to create some content that's squarely in the awareness phase. And what are the questions that they're asking there? Well, if we know what those questions are, then we can go ahead and we can look right here and we say, well, what are the Google keywords that they would use to search for that? And then social media, where are the platforms that they would go to find out about it, right? I think I gave an example once of my friend who said my house, or I have an investment property, or he just said I think he said my friend's house is on fire, but really it was his own. And I need a homeowner's policy for a house that's currently on fire. How do I get that? Either way, he was, communicating with people. And so the question is, what are the keywords that they're going to ask? Once they do that, they're going to find some content and they're going to review it. They're going to read it and they're going to analyze it and they say, okay. I mean, on a kind of a high level, it's either going to help them solve their problem or it's not going to help them solve their problem. They're going to keep on looking. And so if it's going to lead them to a decision, then the decision might be like, oh, you know what? This makes sense. Okay, I do have this problem. And now they're going to go on to the next phase. And the next phase might be, okay, now I need to figure out, which solution would work for me. Okay, and some of this is your job, right? As a producer, you're going to be able to walk them through and say, okay, you know what? You need this kind of policy, then I've got these different carriers that provide it, and these are the pros and cons of those, and you're going to walk them through that. But they're going to have different questions at those phases. So what we want to do is I think the word is explicate. We want to explicate this and make it very clear what each of these things are. And to do that, I've created a tool, and it's called the Mapping Your Buyer's Journey tool. And what you can see with this tool here is that it is just a series of questions that as you answer them, it will help you understand what it is that your client is looking at. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. I'm going to jump forward a little bit here just to show you roughly what it's about, and then we'll go through it with an example. So you might have a product or service you want to provide. So let's say, I don't care if it's what it is. It could be home or auto. It could be a mod. It could be just a BOP. I mean, it could be a lot of different things. But go ahead and put that there, and then what we're going to do with this is instead of here's the thing. A lot of times we think, okay, what does that want to do? And we have this romantic notion of the future. Well, what I would really recommend that you do is just look backwards and fill this out for some of your existing clients. So again, you've probably thought about this over the last few days. Who are my favorite clients? And what are the products that I'm providing for them? Okay, we're going to now journal that experience in this document. And so we're going to ask ourselves, what was their name? Were there any other decision makers, right? Are there any other decision makers that were in the process? What's the relationship to you right now? Now, it might be that if you're thinking about the awareness phase, right, versus the decision phase, you're going to have to think back to what were their questions when they first met with you. And you have a couple of options here. You could actually, you could just reach out to them and just say, you know what, I'm trying to better understand your needs, and, maybe they're a good friend that you can ask them, do you remember this? Do you remember that? But also you actually have CSRs, and you yourself have all your experience of all the questions they're asking you over and over again. So for some of you, this is going to be really easy. Some of you might have to do a little bit of legwork to really pull this out. But what are the questions that they're asking? That's what we're going to get down to. So we've got them. What stage were they in? Okay, zoom back in here. What is the buyer's problem or objective as they perceived it at this stage? And that's really key, as they perceived it. So again, the problem is often we're at the decision phase or at the sales phase, and we want to just solve this for them. They're trying to figure it out. And so then we've got these questions. What questions or concerns did they have at this stage? And in this form, you can fill those out. And then what did their brain need to believe to move forward? What did their heart need to feel to move forward? And then what did they do to resolve their concern? Now, we've talked about this before. You know, there's the brain and then there's the heart. There's this emotion and there's this intellect. So we're going to solve for both of those. And we can put a couple answers up there. Now, number 6, we got a few more things. List resources you have to help resolve their question or concern. So you might already have some really good stuff that you can share with them. And you know, oh, this carrier's got this really great article. I'm going to give you an example of that here in a minute. You've got these different resources. It might be that you have stories, data, insights that you can share. You probably, if you've been selling for a while and there's a product that you sell often, then what happens is you can almost guess what the questions are going to be that they ask when you sit down to talk to them. All we're doing now is we're writing those questions out ahead of time so we can create content that we can get it out on the web ahead of time so they can get those questions answered before they meet with us, or at least partially answered. Right? A lot of times we're going to go over this again when we meet with them, but this is what is leading them to us. It's helping them make that decision. So do you have any stories? Do you have any data? You know, like X% of businesses after a data breach go out of business within 5 years. You know, like this kind of data can be very helpful for the consumer when they're trying to figure this stuff out. And then with that, once you've got to line that out, are there any keywords? You can see how this reaches back to that little wheel I had. Are there any keywords or phrases that are associated with their question? Because we're going to want to make sure that we're optimizing our content to really directly correlate with the keywords they're using as they search on the web to solve their problem. And then what I find it's really helpful at this point to just kind of project what you think would be the best kind of medium by which you will communicate this information to them. So is it really, you know, is it a short question you can answer in a social post? Is it a blog post or an article? Maybe it's a checklist that you need to provide, or a calculator, a video, a case study, a testimonial. And I leave you blank there because there's probably some other things. So just go through this and you can do this. So what we're going to talk about today is, I think the next thing is we're going to go through this as an example. So before we go through an example, I just want to clarify exactly what your assignment is for today. Your assignment for today is I'd like for you to pick a product that you really like selling, right? Maybe you got a carrier that's got this awesome product. And I want you to then think of one of your clients or a couple of your clients that have purchased that product, that they have that solution. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fill this out, and we're going to fill it out for each of these phases. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to print this document out 3 or 4 more times. So you got like 4 copies of it. And if you do this for multiple products, then you know you're going to want to print it out for each one of those products. But your homework for today is pick a product, and I want you to fill this out for each of those phases. So of the awareness phase, you know, when they're just discovering that they, you know, could you write some content for someone that's going to the web to say, I'm trying to decide if I really have this problem. And then could you write some content, right? In the future, the goal would be to create some content. What are the questions that they have in the consideration? So this one is what is cyber liability? How do I know which kinds I need? And then who can provide it? Now that I have it, what are the follow-up questions? You know, there's just this different levels of these questions. And so you're going to fill this out for each of them. That's your homework assignment for today. And honestly, with that, many of you have enough that you can go on. Now, I will tell you tomorrow, I'm going to introduce to you guys an article template. So tomorrow's lesson is all about taking this information, picking one of those phases, or it might be you can combine the information you share from multiple phases into one article. But I'm going to give you a template. We're going to go through it so you can actually create a very specific content, a piece of content. It's an article that you can then either write out or you can shoot as a video that you can share online that's going to fit the needs of attracting your ideal client. So what we're going to say is go ahead, and I'm going to give you guys I really want to give you more time today because this takes a while. I don't want to talk too much. Go ahead and jump in and start doing this. For those that are interested, I'm actually going to walk through a couple examples of this in the other video down below. But I will say, for those of you guys who are just jumping in, we'll come back to this on the other one. Let me just jump out of here. One of the things that you're going to find, this is an article from Trusted Choice, and it says 5 questions to ask about insurance before launching your online store. And if you read through this, all right, let's just take a look here. All right, so if we go through this, it's got some great information here. Let me get away from those ads here. Let me zoom in on this so you can see a little better. So am I required to have business insurance? Okay. And even so, do I need liability insurance? What are some common risks that online store owners face? And so then they've got some topics here. How do I know what type of insurance I need? General liability, cyber liability, product liability, professional liability. So this is an example. This is an example of an article that I would say covers a lot of the material that you would be filling out for this mapping out your buyer's journey. But there's a couple key differences here, right? A typical agent is going to just send someone to this, right? You might have, hey, here's some information, and you send it to it, okay? That's okay. It's going to answer their questions, but there's two things it's not considering. It isn't considering which phase they're in, and so the questions that they have about each of these things are going to be different depending on which phase they're in. Secondly, it doesn't bind them to you. And ultimately, the reason we're going to create our own content is not because this content isn't on the web. It is on the web. But what it isn't is it isn't on the web with your voice. It isn't on the web that binds you to the reader in such a way that when it's time for them to make a decision, you're the one that they're going to lean to because you've helped them the most, and they recognize that you've helped them the most. So we're not really talking yet about how to do it. That's tomorrow. Today we're just really understanding what it is that are the steps in the buyer's journey. So if they're going through these things and they're asking some of these questions, then what we want to think about is in the awareness phase, in the consideration, the decision phase, when are these questions going to come up? How are they articulated differently so we can map that all out? So why am I telling you this? Let me just circle back here, because you might be going through this and you might say, oh, I got this all filled out. But if you go and you look at some of this public content, especially by the carriers and some of these organizations, then there's some really solid stuff out there. But it isn't enough on its own to really solve the person's problem. What they need is that video from you or the content piece from you that's more personalized, that you insert a case study. I mean, we'll get into this, right? We'll go through this through the example, but you insert a case study, or you exert a testimonial, or you insert just some personal methodology on the way that you work with your clients. And those things are going to make your relationship start to occur, right? Those little ghost versions of you as the guru, that's what's going to help them start connecting with you. So when it's time for them to make the decision of who am I going to talk to, you're just the most obvious target. That's what we're doing here. That's the secret behind the methodology. So work on these, go ahead and print them off and work on them. And then for those that would like, then you can just go ahead and watch the video below, and we'll actually go through each line item of this tool and talk about it. And I think I'll do both a personal and a commercial example for this. All right, good luck, have fun, and I'll see you in the next video, or I'll see you tomorrow, where we're gonna actually take this stuff and start writing our articles. Like always, please, if you're struggling, if you have questions, if you're excited, go into the Boss Social community and share it there. And for today's lesson, it's Buyer's Journey. Go ahead and put that in there so that way we can click that link and see what everyone has to share. You're not alone. We're here to help. Just don't overlook this step. Do this step.